Make my day.
What are you doing?
Nothing.
So, versus videos aren't always that dramatic. Usually when I do versus, I like to take all of my personal opinions out and try to look at these totally objectively. OS preferences, not a factor. And we've got two really heavy hitters here. We've got Samsung's Galaxy S21, Apple's iPhone 12, two phones that are priced almost identically and are clearly competing head to head. So I'm gonna go through and give you guys my thoughts and opinions on all of these, and at the end, I will declare a winner. So obviously these phones are competing against each other, but it's one of the rare generations where you get new design languages for each. And that's awesome, and I got a lot of stuff to say about the design and build, but I do want to start with what I think is the biggest reason people are getting smartphones now, or at least upgrading them, and is cameras. And I love to start these versus videos by just doing completely blind tests, putting up a bunch of pictures that were taken at exactly the same time, and let you guys see if you can decide which one was which. I was actually blown away by how eerily similar these looked. Sort of the old way of Samsung processing where things were like extra contrasty and poppy aren't really here, and sort of where the iPhone used to be a little bit more muted isn't really the same as it used to be here either. I was shocked actually just how similar all of these pictures looked. And like if you take a look at the sample shots here, each is treating the highlights and shadows pretty similarly, right? Like the colors are poppy, but for the first time, like not overly so. And night mode continues that theme. Things look really similar and generally impressive between the two. Portrait mode is also like bananas fantastic on both devices. Skin tone, we can see a little bit of difference between the two. Might be the only giveaway as to which phone took which shot. So just leave in the comments which one you think is first before you keep watching the video. But the S21 was A and the iPhone 12 was B. This was really surprising. And I think I still had some preconceived notions about Samsung cameras in my head because that's how they've always been, right? Like I said before, the pictures from Samsung phones are always really contrasty. They're bright colors. I tend to like those, but it's always what I expected Samsung photos to look like. And that wasn't the case here. And I was actually very pleasantly surprised with how good the pictures looked. And the photos in general were now so similar between the two. If all you're caring about is sort of the main shooter, the wide angle part, I mean, honestly, just close your eyes, pick a phone, and it's going to be great for you. But the story behind the cameras is a lot more, I think, than just that wide angle. So I know I'm in the minority, but I really like having telephoto. It's why when I went for the iPhone, I went for the Pro Max so I could get the most telephoto possible. The iPhone 12 doesn't have any telephoto at all. So if that's something that matters to you, then the S21, like just get the S21 and you're going to be good to go. And not only has, you know, a regular telephoto, it is a 30 times zoom feature. It's 10 times optical and the rest is kind of some digital magic that's being done. It's got an amazing stabilization feature to help you capture a really clear picture. And it's not always like super usable. I wouldn't, you know, print out pictures from a 30 times zoom, but there are times where it's helpful. It kind of reminded me that not every photo that I take on any phone has to be a masterpiece. Like sometimes a camera's utility, like a great zoom feature that has stabilization built in, is just generally more useful in situations than taking, you know, a photo of something. An example that I actually had was wanting to take a picture of a sign that was really far away. If you didn't know this about me, as a kid, I was actually legally blind in my left eye. My eyesight is not very good. So I do oftentimes use my phone to put out the camera and kind of zoom in to see things. The S21 was really helpful to have that. And if that's something that you want to use, you take pictures of kids playing, or you take a lot of nature shots, you like to zoom in, then the S21 is really a no-brainer decision. But sort of on the flip side of that, with not every picture needing to be a masterpiece, not every piece of video you take, you know, needs to be cinematic quality. But there is a much clear difference between these two phones. Video is generally better on the iPhone. And Samsung has come a really long way with video, especially with this Snapdragon 888 that's in here. But still, there are some issues that plague Samsung phones and tend to plague Android in general. Not to say this is bad at all. In fact, I think the Snapdragon 888 does a really admirable job at video. It's just that whereas Zoom was something that the S21 did great, video is something that Apple really excels on. Camera for me is one of the two biggest reasons that I look to buy phones and upgrade phones. Screen being the second. So if you are like me, which one you want to pick based on the camera is going to be a priority thing, right? If you want a phone that overall just takes great photo and video, you care nothing about telephoto lens, or you just don't care about digital zoom, then the iPhone 12 is an amazing way to go. But if you care about having a telephoto lens, having more camera variety, and video that's still very good, I would go for the S21. For me, though, you could probably tell which one I would go based just on cameras. I'm picking up the S21. So both phones take pretty similar pictures. That is where the similarities tend to end. Apple and Samsung couldn't have gone in more like divergent directions with the design of these phones, how they look. Very happy and clapping that Apple changed their design for the first time in 3 generations. And you can say a lot about Apple. Their designs tend to look really good, and then they just drag them out for years until they get stale. And it's been argued by some, and sometimes even me, that Apple kind of went back to an old design for the iPhone 4, iPhone 5 design for the iPhone 12. I like the flat edges. I think it feels really nice in the hand. I don't mind the aluminum on the sides. I don't mind the glass on the back. What did feel very strange about the iPhone 12 to me is how light it felt in the hand. It still feels weird to me when I pick the phone up, but I think it's a very good looking phone overall. I was never the biggest fan, I guess, of the design of the S20 phones. I thought they were more utilitarian than anything else. Samsung pivoted with the S21. I really like the design language of the S21, especially the Thanos purple of the S21 that we've got right here. I think the camera module kind of floating off into the band is a really beautiful design choice. It has the same issue in the feel that the iPhone 12 does. It feels really light to me, and the back material feels less quality than the Ultra did. Both phones, though, I think feel really nice and look nice. This is a total just flip a coin, whichever design you prefer. I like that they're both new, so I'm just giving claps to newness, and I'm not having a winner when it comes to design of the phones. Screen, however, is a very, very different thing. As important as camera is to me, screen, I think, is equally and sometimes even more important. That's what you're looking at. That's your portal to everything this phone can do. It doesn't matter processor, it doesn't matter RAM, it doesn't matter OS. If it's got a bad screen, it is going to diminish your experience. Fortunately, though, both these screens are, at least at the very base, very good. So sizes are almost identical. The S21 is 6.2 inches, iPhone 12, 6.1 inches. Both have OLED screens, and both were actually made by Samsung. Difference, though, comes down to resolution. S21, feels even weird to say this though, is a 1080p display. The iPhone 12 is a little bit better. Think of it as kind of between 1080p and 2K. Samsung and Apple calibrate the displays differently. It's a preference which one you prefer. I tend to gravitate towards how Apple does their calibrations. I will say if you're worried about a 1080p display on the S21, it hasn't bothered me at all. Sort of, maybe it's a mental thing where like knowing it's only 1080p, but it is a really good 1080p panel. And there's certainly an argument to be made that you want to have sort of the lowest resolution where you can't see pixels, save battery life. But that's not the only story with the displays. Samsung, and the S21 obviously in particular, has a gorgeous 120 hertz refresh display, whereas the iPhone is living it old school with 60 hertz. And I've said it before, I will say it again, modern flagships need a higher refresh rate, or at least give me the option to turn it on and off at my own risk of battery life. And all the amazing things that I can say about how Apple's ecosystem is great and how well it works together, Apple really has tended to fall short on giving choice to the users. And that's clearly where Android has succeeded. And I think if anything, Apple should be taking a page out of Android's playbook. Give users the choice what to do with their screen refresh rate. Do you want it on and sacrifice battery life? Do you want to turn it off and have better battery life? That's a choice that I as a consumer would like to make, and one I imagine we'll have with the iPhone 12s or iPhone 13, whatever comes next. But for right now, it's here on the Samsung. And if I have to pick, at least personally, between resolution and refresh rate, I'm going to refresh rate almost 100% of the time. I tend to not even talk that much about performance in these Versus videos because all phones are crazy fast. We've got an A14 in the iPhone 12 and the beastly Snapdragon 888 in the Galaxy S21 paired with 8 gigabytes of RAM. And if you're wondering, the iPhone 12 has 6 gigabytes of RAM. That doesn't really tend to impact performance at all. Both phones are absolute beasts. There was no slowdown, no problem with multitasking. Both phones are really quick, running cutting edge processors. So whatever you want to do, gaming, video is going to be fast. You get it, they're fast phones. I'm just gonna say it again, they're fast phones. So typically, Samsung's been known for packing just a ton of things into their flagship phones. The intangible categories of these Versus videos used to be really long, and sometimes unnecessarily long. With the S21 though, Samsung is definitely taking a step back and taking features out, but they did at least drop the price around $200 from what the S20 came out at. One feature that I was really disappointed to see gone is the MST feature of Samsung Pay, which is still present in some parts of the world, not here in the US. And that was a tragedy. Samsung Pay was absolutely amazing. You could use it in front of any credit card reader, even if it wasn't tap to pay or NFC. It would sort of simulate a magnetic field, like actually swiping a credit card. It was awesome, it was magic, and I loved it. And it gave Samsung the huge edge over any other mobile payment, including Apple Pay, and it's gone here. And they also took away the SD card slot. That wasn't a big deal to me personally. I've stopped using SD cards on phones, but at least know that going in. If you're the type of person who has a lot of the information on SD cards and needs to have it, then the S21 is probably not going to be for you. Both phones did remove the power brick from the box. I've talked about that at length. It happens. Hopefully you guys have one. If not, they're both happy to sell you one though. So speaking of removing things, sort of the one major thing Apple removed from the iPhone 12 from the previous year was the very important milliamp hours on the battery. The iPhone 11 had a pretty nice 3046 milliamp hour battery, whereas the 12 has, I think, a relatively anemically sized 2815 battery. Just on pure milliamp hours, the S21 just grounds the iPhone 12 into submission with a 4000 milliamp hour battery. But it's not just a story of milliamp hours. In actual usage, the battery life was pretty similar. And whether that's iOS battery efficiencies or A14, I can't say. For the iPhone 12, it was 4 to 5 hours, like consistently, of screen on time, whereas the S21 was more in the 5 to 6. So not a huge difference, nothing really noticeable, but slightly better with the Samsung. So Samsung and Apple obviously have very different approaches to a lot of things. The big one, I think, is biometrics. Face ID is technically a more secure way to lock your phone information, especially compared to the S21's face detection, which is not real face detection, essentially, it's just using the camera. However, the S21's fingerprint reader is stupid fast. It's using the latest generation of Qualcomm's technology, and I've talked a lot in previous videos of how I think I've got weird thumbs, but fingerprint readers never work well for my thumb, whether they're on the side or the back or built into the screen. That was not the case with the S21. It worked fast, it worked reliably every single time. Actually, I had to check to make sure I had the facial unlock on the S21 turned off because it was unlocking so fast. It was amazing, it was awesome. It makes me excited for Touch ID coming back, hopefully, to the iPhone. And in previous non-pandemic years, I would have picked Face ID 100 out of 100 times. But seeing how good the in-screen fingerprint reader is and how oftentimes I'm wearing a mask anywhere I go outside, when it comes to biometrics, Samsung gets the edge here. And the last thing that's similar here, both phones are 5G capable of pretty much every flavor of 5G you may want to pick up. So this is a versus of two really good phones. There's more to love about these phones than there are not. Even the things that Samsung removed from the S21. So straight up, if OS is your biggest determining factor, then you probably already know which one you're going to pick, and you're not going to be wrong for picking that. But we got to pick a winner. If both of these phones are on a table and you don't have any OS allegiance whatsoever, I'm going to pick up the Galaxy S21. It comes down to higher refresh rate, it comes down to telephoto, and the flexibility that I get with those cameras. The build quality was great. I can deal with slightly lower video fidelity than I got with the iPhone. It delivers an amazing battery life, a small package. I also really like the Thanos purple. It is a wonderful phone I think will serve anybody well over the next few years.